So again, the plan was to move all the apps to a 3-tuple version number, move them from the snapshot of that version number to the release. And so we will have apps at 1.2.0, which are typically the apps that existed already. And then the new apps that have been introduced as part of some of this VOLTHA work will be 1.0.0. And we'll release those apps as that. Then we will increment the app versions to 1.3 and 1.1 snapshot versions, and then we will move their support from ONOS 1.8 to ONOS 1.10.3. I think we had to go to 0.3. Originally it was 0.2. That changed to 0.3, and I believe that was because there was some critical patch to the 10.3 release around network configuration for Cord, really, but we're going to the same version. The process of that is for each of the apps, we're going to create a branch. We'll call that a stable branch, if you will, a release stable branch. And then we're going to update and merge the release versions into that branch. And those, therefore, each app will have its release branch. And John, that's going to be called, what is it, release dash version number?
Yeah, it's app name dash version number.
Okay.
So for AAA, it's AAA-1.2.
Okay.
At least that's following what ONOS does and what Cord has done. So.
Yep, makes perfect sense. And after that, those branches will only have bug fixes. They shouldn't have any new features, but then normal feature development can continue on the master branch of each of those applications. Once we have that branch created and tagged, if you will, or version updated, really, we will then update the versions in master to the next version, so the 1.3 and the 1.1, and those will both be snapshot versions, and we'll commit those version changes to master, and work will go on from there with new features. Really, it's a hard-need sprint for VOLTHA, so hopefully not many new features, if any. If there are changes to the release branch, bug fixes that we want to put in the release branch that we also want to put in master, or vice versa, we'll have to cherry pick from one to the other. It's unclear that we will need that because we're really cutting this release branch around the apps for purposes to say we have kind of a snapshot of the apps as they are supported on ONOS 1.8.
But for the apps that are supporting 1.10, do you expect that we'll want to release an RC version?
I think what's going to happen is when VOLTHA releases, we're probably going to have to take and create an RC as well.
Okay.
Are we ready to create an RC right now as soon as we move them to 1.10? That might not be a bad idea. I mean, we really are in bug fix mode. As soon as all the commits are in, I guess we could create a stable branch for that as well.
Right, yeah.
That makes sense. Two apps. And then we'll kick master to 1, or I guess it's 2.4.0 snapshot. Wow, a lot of versioning really quickly.
Yeah, this is Shiva here. I have a question. When we go to ONOS and we do the basic version on the console, it gives 3.0.5. So there is no, I'm not sure how the correlation of that is with 1.10.3. I mean, so do we need at some point some kind of a mapping between them, or?
Well, so 3.0.5 is the Carafe version,
Yeah.
not the
Right.
ONOS version.
If you do summary, if you do the summary command at the CLI, it should give you the ONOS version.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and basically each release of ONOS depends on a particular version of Carafe.
And I think it actually changes between 1.8, which is 3.05 of Carafe. I think 1.10 goes to 3.0. Is it 9?
8.
8. Okay.
Yeah, 118 is 305. Right.
So that, I guess that kind of covers what I think the plan is for the applications. Anybody have any questions, comments, thoughts on that? All right. I'm good for short meetings, so if we can...
Well, yeah, I guess the only thing is that for some of the apps, we may not even need to release... Oh, no, I guess for all of them, we need to release a new version that supports 1.10. That'll be the change, the one change. Yep. Okay.
Yep. Releasing and branching for adapters is a little more interesting. And why it's more interesting is because apps are independent repos. They run on their own process. Well, not their own process base, but they really are their own projects. Adapters share a repo with VOLTHA, and they actually share a process space with VOLTHA, which makes it a little interesting. Because I can't release VOLTHA as a separate process and then, dynamically upgrade an app, or sorry, an adapter. Every time I upgrade an adapter and want to re-release it, I actually have to re-release the VOLTHA container, at least until they're completely separate, which is not in release 1 of VOLTHA. So what I was thinking here is, since we wanted to create a stable branch of VOLTHA, and so I think we do that the same way we do with the apps, create a branch for it, update the versions, and this code isn't Java, so I'm not sure what update the versions means here, because I don't know where the version is really exposed. So it may just be exposed in Git, which is a little unfortunate because I can't go to the binary and ask it what it is. We need to talk to VOLTHA people about that. And VOLTHA self-describe its version. Both core and adapters, because if we're going to have adapters with different versions, we're going to need it there as well. So create a branch of VOLTHA, update versions, however that is updated, and release that as essentially a release candidate for VOLTHA 1.0.0. Adapters, which are going to be changing the next sprint. If we want to, when we want to create a new or release an adapter, that means, I think, in my opinion, is we're also going to have to kick the VOLTHA version up to 1.0.1, 1.0.2, etc. Every time we commit a new adapter, we have to kick the VOLTHA. And I thought kicking the VOLTHA up by a minor version ID would be appropriate in this instance. Thoughts on that?
So we're adding adapters to VOLTHA. Yes, the plan is to update the minor version rather than the revision, just because it's not a maintenance change, right?
Okay.
And we're doing that in parallel with what Cord is doing. So when we update the services or use cases, that would be a minor version change rather than a revision change.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it's just a little weird because these are part of the same process in a lot of ways. Okay. And really, that is the plan. I mean, there isn't anything too complicated what we're doing in terms of process, I think. It's really just kind of get agreement on the version numbers and, how we do this. We create branches, we tag things, and then we move forward.
I think the gotcha there. So we're going to have a support branch, and then there's going to be a version of the adapter snapshot code, right? Work is going to progress on the adapter. Is that going to be on the support branch or on master?
My understanding was that was going to be against master. But does that make sense? That may not make sense.
So we're creating a 1.0 support branch.
The problem is we're going to have a lot of backporting. Does it make sense to put the adapters in separate repos at this point? I guess, or is that just too much work?
I don't know what the impact would be, especially since adapters are already behind.
The
concern is going to be, and I don't know if Sean is online, but as people start testing VOLTHA and the adapter, where do we see bug fixes coming in? And if we were to provide a version for the POC, what version is that? And how will it change as bug fixes come in, right? So how do we preserve to some extent the integrity of it as the POC starts? Wearing the ONF hat, I don't care. Everyone can just put fixes in. We'll just use whatever version. I think AT&T may have a different opinion in terms of the integrity of the testing they want to preserve.
I mean, the problem is because it's all one repo, you can't really have a snapshot version of adapters, right? It's just one repo.
I know, but that's, I think what we're going to have to work through is how are we going to handle bug fixes? What branch are they on? How do we make sure that we have a version of VOLTHA for testing? How do we have a version of the adapter for testing? What is the implication of whichever branch we're using over the test cycle with the various vendors?
Okay, so my thought here, right or wrong, and it was adapter work would continue on the master branch because once a version's stable, technically you're not supposed to do anything but bug fixes, and adapter work isn't bug fixes. So you continue on master. When an adapter is ready to be released, that means there's going to be a re-release of VOLTHA with that adapter, which means we're then creating another stable branch off essentially master. And that also means that any bug fixes that are in like the 1.0.0 support branch will have to be cherry picked or back ported to master, which is what's going to happen anyway.
So today, the use case versions that are being implemented are essentially working off of the support branch. I'm not saying it's the correct thing, but does it make sense to branch off of the support branch for the adapter if it's based on 1.0 versus the master?
But how's it going to get back into master? It's got to eventually, all the fixes for the adapters eventually have to be back into master. And if I'm going to go from 1.0.0 for VOLTHA to 1.1.0, that's really not a branch of 1.0.0. It's really another branch of master. There's a lot of branches there.
So the support for the support branch and the release for 1.0 would then go into kind of the initial POC testing. So if we assume, whichever vendor A, goes into testing, they'll use VOLTHA 1.0, and then if the adapter slips, it'll continue on master, and then we'll do a 1.1, and then that will then go into testing for the adapter.
So it's kind of like that little tree there, I think. The only caveat being that let's see if I can do this in text edit. At some point there also may be for that type of thing. That makes sense? I can draw that in a graphic prettier, but essentially bug fix happens on 1.0.0, but those bug fixes really need to be backported or merged into master as well, where appropriate. And after we cut the support branch additional adapter work happens on master, and at some point when an adapter or one or more adapters are ready to be released, we cut a 1.1.0 release, and that becomes a bug fix. And master, any additional adapter work would continue on master until all adapters are done, and then eventually we'll have a 1.x.0 release of VOLTHA with all the new adapters.
Yeah, it's just that all of those new releases of VOLTHA are going to contain any changes to VOLTHA that happen in the meantime as well.
Yep. That's true.
But yeah, I think that's really the only way to do it, considering everything is in one repo.
I mean, the other assumption is that sometimes it's possible. I guess it's not an assumption. Possibility is that adapter work requires some change to VOLTHA core, right? Someone says, "Oh, I can't do what I need because the call sequence is wrong or the data is wrong or whatever," and so you're going to see the core changed anyway. I don't I mean, if there's a better way, I'm definitely open to suggestions.
Yeah, I don't see a better way. I think this is really only a problem if there was, major work continuing on VOLTHA that wasn't targeted at the release, right? Like there was some new redesign of something. But if everybody is kind of focused on this release and there's not major rework of VOLTHA going on, then it shouldn't be too much of a problem. It's just that VOLTHA may change slightly from 1.0.0 to 1.1.
Yeah. I mean, we can always say if there's going to be a major rework of something, we need to cut another branch for that major rework.
Right, yeah.
Right. And that'll have to be merged in at some other point. Right. So and we'll just have to watch. We'll all have to be vigilant of ourselves and each other to say, "Hey, wait, don't put that in, right? Put that in the release branch. Don't put that in core." So does that make sense to people then for adapter work?
I think we're just going to have to present it and then see what feedback we get. I think ultimately it's going to come down to, right, once we get the adapter in, is there a version that we're kind of holding and freezing for all the testing? So that strategy probably needs to be worked through. So.
Once we get an adapter, once an adapter is released, yeah, we have a stable branch, a 1.x.0 stable branch for testing. But if a new adapter is released, yeah, you're retesting from scratch.
Agreed. And I think it was more for POC3, right? So is that initial version of the adapter release kind of what we freeze on to start testing with?
And I don't know if the adapters are going to all release at once, or what we're going to see is, vendor X releases their adapter and they want a stable release, and then 2 weeks later vendor Y does the same thing and they want a stable release.
And I think that should be completely valid, right? Similar to the concept of drivers and stuff. I think it's really more, I'm trying to look at it very, very short term in the context of POC3. But I think as a general strategy, as adapters come in, we can increment.
Well, once we get past 1.0 for VOLTHA and we make adapters separate containers, then I think adapters become separate repos and a lot of these problems go away.
Yes, that would be nice.
But the problem, as Jonah pointed out right now, is everything's in one repo and in one process.
And hopefully we can do that after VOLTHA 1.0 and this adapter work.
Yeah.
If the adapter work wasn't so critical, I would say we go ahead and do it.
Yep, agreed.
Just to decouple it.
So the next steps at this point, we're supposed to present this Thursday at the TST, as I recall. Yes?
Yes.
So I will if there's no objections or no other changes, what I'll do is I'll take the action item to create a couple slides around this, because I'm not sure everybody will enjoy my VI drawing. And we can present that Thursday. I may send it out to the email list before Thursday, just because if I can get feedback ahead of time as opposed to during Thursday's TST, we can do some incremental updates.
So yeah, so post 1.0 of Volta core, in that case, we don't need to look into the mapping structure, because you're saying it'll be repo by itself, all the adapters?
The plan is to separate the adapters into their own repo and their own container after really POC 3, probably. But yeah, release 1.x.0 of Volta. So when Volta goes to 2.0, and I assume that's what we're going to do, is upgrade a major version when we do that, adapters will be their own projects, completely independent.
Yeah, okay.
Or not completely independent, I guess loosely coupled would be a better way to put it.
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments, thoughts, or are we okay with this? Given the imperfect situation, is this what we think we can go forward with? Andy, Scott, makes sense to you? Are they still on?
It just took me a minute to figure out how to unmute myself. It made sense to me.
All right.
Yeah, it seems fine.
Sorry, Andy, we're going to need to get back to you to create a couple more branches here and there.
Yeah, keep them coming.
Okay. All right. One last roundtable. If anybody's got any thoughts, questions, comments, please speak up. Otherwise, you all get a half an hour back.
So this is Sean. So we all resolved. I just joined the call.
Oh, great. We have a plan.
Okay.
Put it that way. That we're going to present. I'm gonna take it from VI and put it in a couple slides that we'll present Tuesday at the TST, and I'll probably email those slides out before the TST.
Okay.
For feedback. So we have a kind of a direction forward. It's not. It's a way in an imperfect situation because of how the adapters and Volta are bound in a single repo today.
Okay.
So we'll write it up. We'll get people's further opinion at the TST or via the mailing list, and see if we can move forward with it.
Yeah. Yeah, because but whatever you're going to deal with, you can address the adapter require more time, right? So is that later on they just recompile something like remake the?
So the summary is each time an adapter releases, because it is part of Volta Core today, the adapters aren't separate.
Yes. We'll
have to release a minor version of Volta as well.
Okay.
So when we'll cut 1.0.0 Volta. When the first adapters ready for release, we'll cut 1.1.0 version of Volta, which will contain that adapter. And then when another adapter is released, we'll kick that up to 1.2.0, etc. And that'll be for release 1 of Volta. For post-release 1, when they become separate containers and separate Git repositories, we don't have to do that. We can have Volta's core release stable,
right,
and then adapters can change a lot more independently.
Right. That basically put it. That's one thing I'm thinking. Because we were working on the release planning for the next release, right? So, so would that be the Volta 1. Whatever, or I think Volta 2.0 we need to container to make the adapter into each own individual container.
Yes, right? So, I would agree with that.
So, but right now, I'm not sure whether we're ready for VOLTHA 2.0 for next release or not.
Well, I don't think
That's
it's going to be ready for POC 3, and as when.
no. I'm talking about the maybe early 2018 release.
Yeah. I think what we'll see is after we get this release and the POC 3 done, there'll probably be a focused effort to strip out the adapters to their own separate stuff, and that'll become VOLTHA 2.0. If that work's going to start before POC 3, then it should start in a feature branch, not on master.
Right. Yeah. So. Well, keep working on that. I'll let you to think about that, and then I'll think about what's next major release, or whether next release is a major release or minor release.
Okay.
I mean, for the I would think the release date probably is early 2018. That's next release. Otherwise, I want the project keep going forward, right? So otherwise, it will Anyway, okay, great. Thank you very much for the effort to get this thing. Good, thanks.
Yep, anytime. Anybody else have any thoughts, comments before we close the meeting then? All right, thank y'all. And please feel free to comment when I send out kind of the write-up.
And you also recorded this one. Okay, good.
I have recorded it, and I'll figure out how to post that somewhere.
Maybe. Oh, yeah. I think maybe the wiki. I think you can post it on the wiki.
Yeah, we'll have to see how big the file is, and if the wiki lets me do that.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, David.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, David.
Bye.
Talk to you later.
Bye.